I think it's live. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, and I am Tracy Starkrath, host of the Eating at a Meeting podcast, which you are listening to now, and the founder of Thrive Meetings and Events. And I am so excited to bring to you my guest today, Gagan Jared Levy. He's the founder and creative director of an award-winning creative agency called Guru, who works with Patagonia, Numi Tea, Rebel, Net Zero Packaging, the Non-GMO Project, and Jedi, which I want to talk to you about, Jared Gagan. He was the board chair of the prestigious Social Venture Circle and on the board of his teacher Ram Dass's Love Serve Remember Foundation. But for everybody to know, I taught him how to swim when he was 5, and I was his babysitter, and I attended his bar mitzvah. So 27 years ago. So I am so excited to see you again. It's been a long time.
It's so good to be here. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I mean, running into you at the Natural Products Expo was like the highlight of, everything. It just, you were, and it was beautiful to run into you in that way too. Like you were talking to Kiss the Ground.
Yep.
And about regenerative agriculture, which is like near and dear to my heart. And I was like, oh my God, yes, you taught me how to swim 35 years ago. And now we've swum back together and we're both working on the same stuff.
Right. And then your mother then did send me a text to say that you do swim and you surf every day. So my swim lessons worked.
Your swim lessons totally paid off. Now I'm not as good as a swim teacher as you. So they always, like, people say, get someone else to train your kids to ski and swim. And so I have a great swim teacher out here for my 5-year-old daughter. But yeah, I appreciate you for sure.
That was a long time. It was a very fun time. And just so everybody knows, my mom also worked for his dad for a long time. So very family connected. All right, so let's jump into this where we both found each other, because we were at the Natural Products Expo, which is this show that brings 60, 80, 100,000 people together to talk about how to be better to the earth, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how that show's developed. It was Natural Products Expo, and the tent has gotten pretty wide. It's like all natural products from all over the world. I will say, and we can go into this or not, that I feel like the tent has gotten pretty wide. Like this year, there were things like Tide, chemical, that are there at the Natural Products Expo. So they're but yeah, it's an amazing show, and not just like individual brands that are coming forth, but also like these larger kind of systemic movements that are happening within the natural products industry, where groups of CEOs are coming together and saying, like, no, this is important, like let's come, if we aggregate our resources, we might be able to make a change here. So yeah, I mean, I've been coming to that show for 15 years or so, and
wow.
Yeah, it was so great to run into you there.
Well, it is, because I've been before, so I'm glad we finally did run into each other, and because this is really important to me. And I went for the food allergy aspect, right, and the dietary needs aspect, so that we could feed people at events. But as I started progressing, I'm like, I want meeting planners to know that the food we're buying, and hoteliers, the food we're buying, we need to know where it's coming from. And we need to know the soil that is being grown in, hence the Kiss the Ground movie, right? I mean, we need to understand that, because it's our largest expenditure, and we need to make smart choices with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of what we do is kind of, yes, we're marketing for brands and movements, but we're helping educate consumers around those things, because at the end of the day, like, if the end user or consumer of that product doesn't ask for it, then like the hotels and whatnot are not really going to change, and this is kind of the shift from being like just bottom line thinking to triple bottom line thinking, like including the how we treat people, how we treat the planet in the production of our goods, in our consideration set, when we're choosing these things. So yeah, I mean, meeting you, like, I think it's amazing what you do, because it's really important. I mean, I just went to a summit last week. I spoke at the CEO summit, and everyone's talking about, sustainability, regenerative, purpose. I mean, all the, buzzwords of the
Mm-hmm.
day. Yet I go back to my room and there's water bottles, single use, plastic water bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I have my own water bottle. Can I, use that with some, and, there's no option for me.
Right.
Yes, the filtered water is in your plastic water bottle in your room,
Yeah.
and being a surfer, I'd rather not use a plastic water bottle because I know where all that stuff ends up, which is in the ocean. So, yeah, it's, I mean, I'm glad this movement is like taking hold, but feeling a little bit of urgency, in
Yeah.
speeding it up. And
Yeah.
it's at places like Natural Products Expo and others where I feel like we're actually gathering like some of these, CEOs and thought leaders to like not just do the lip service and
Mm-hmm.
pledge about it, but actually like execute, operationalize these things within their company, and then just give better choices to consumers. Hopefully they get educated enough that they realize like, oh yeah, like post-consumer recycled plastic a little better than single use, and then like maybe an aluminum can like path water or something like
Right.
that. It's like, oh, okay, reusable, there you
Yep.
go.
My path water. There we go. Yeah. I
Right,
love
I
this
mean,
can. It's awesome.
yeah, it's a great example of, when you have like a mission with a product rather than
Mm-hmm.
just a product with a mission.
Mm-hmm.
Like the founders of that company were straight up like, how do we get plastic out of our oceans? Number one way is get rid of single-use plastic bottles. So they came up with this idea, crazy idea. Well, let's just sell people these reusable bottles like they get with Swell or any of these other
Mm-hmm.
companies, but do it for $3 and the water comes inside. You
Right.
know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the water industry now, $6 billion, something like that. It's,
Wow.
I mean, it's one of the largest consumer packaged goods kind of industries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, no, I mean, it's things like that. It's little incremental,
Right.
kind of inventions or
Right.
improvements that then make it possible for us to like manifest our values and our choices.
Right. Well, and then I'm a couple last year, I had two women that are water sommeliers on the show.
Uh-huh.
And I thought it was interesting. And like I found this Hawaiian volcanic water at a gas station, which I love because it's volcanic water, but it's a single use plastic bottle.
And they
So
shipped it from Hawaii.
right. So let's put this in this, right? And let me reuse this. And granted, I'm going to refill it from my fridge, but still, and I do like the size of it. I broke
Yeah.
the lid, so it's leaking
Well,
on me.
we'll
But
get
yeah,
we'll get you another one. But like,
okay.
I mean, the thing is that okay, even breaking those two down,
Hmm.
like yes, volcanic water like probably tastes fantastic, all these things.
Right.
Path water, what they're doing, for instance, is they're not staying beholden to a single source. They'll
Okay.
locally source their water, so it's
Okay.
purified water. It's not, from some volcano in Hawaii or Fiji or whatever,
Okay.
and that's for a reason. It's so that they don't have to ship liquid all over the world. You know,
That's smart. Yeah.
so, I mean, just this is kind of, I think, where those choice points are, with businesses is like, how do we build companies and limit like the negative externalities in
Hmm.
the production of the business? There's first like the do no harm,
Right.
like how do we take care of everybody in our supply chain, everybody at the in the company, those sorts of things. There's like do no harm to the planet, and
Hmm.
looking at all the ways we can do that. I mean, no single use plastic, not shipping water all over the world, solar powered, manufacturing. I mean, all these things are totally possible.
Right.
And then there's like, how do we do good? And
Hmm.
then you can start to move into like community give back programs and those sorts of things. But I find that a lot of companies these days, they kind of like make their product in whatever way makes as much profit as possible, and then they
Right.
give a little bit back, like
Hmm.
and to the community or whatever. And it's like, great, okay, glad you're giving something back, but like, let's focus on how to, maybe not impact the planet as much as possible
Right.
in the actual production of it. So that's
Right.
why I love that brand, Path Water. It's like inherent to the business is, doing good in some way.
Well, and it kind of brings me to my event. I was in Florida last week managing food and beverage for a conference, and we ended up donating 250 pounds of food that was prepared but unserved. So it didn't go to the front of the front of the house, but it was more of the bulk food. But I had appetizers like stuffed peppadew peppers and little things, and those just all got trashed. I'm like, oh my God, I would have put them in my refrigerator and eaten them all. You shouldn't have thrown them away, right? But they're like that nonprofit didn't want the little tiny appetizers. And we had a
Right.
bunch of, nobody ate my beets. I ordered beets and little things and nobody ate them, unfortunately. They're so good. Um, but I'm like, we should have just piled all those beets into, a bowl and given that bowl to that nonprofit, right? Because you could have done something different with it in that way. And so, and when I'm designing menus, I'm thinking what cut my number, how much I'm ordering, but I also have to think about what's going to be donated at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that when we met, I told you about how, my brother for years was running this nonprofit called Conscious Alliance, and their whole mission is hunger relief.
Mm-hmm.
And they just launched this whole program where they're taking close to code food. So what I mean by that is food that is close to hitting that expiration date, even though
Mm-hmm.
the expiration date is kind of more suggested. I mean, they're
Right.
being safe. It's like a Best Buy, but yeah, they're taking that food and they're donating it to the local food banks and Native American reservations, specifically things like that. And it's just amazing. Like the more that we can build, I think, like a
Mm-hmm.
circular, economy. I mean, that's happening with consumer packaged goods, but like you're saying, there's even some nonprofits I've seen out there and some tech platforms in cities, specifically
Mm-hmm.
here in I live in Marin, but in San Francisco,
Uh-huh.
where they'll pick up your food, that's
Mm-hmm.
like would be thrown away and give it away to
Right.
to houseless folks. And I just think like the more ways we can find, those capabilities, even with the legal landscape as it is, there's
Right.
always like, well, is it going to be safe? I mean, we can't give away food that, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, people are hungry and there's extra food here. Like,
Right.
what, there's not much more to think about than that,
And there's no
Um,
mold on it. So, if right.
and it's beets, right? Tasty
Right.
beets, or like
Exactly.
like it's like good food, it's nutrition dense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it kills me to see food waste. My wife laughs because I'm like the vacuum going through the refrigerator all the time, because I get like some joy out of it. I'm trying to find like the stuff that's going to go to waste.
And what can I mix with this and what can I mix with that? And one of the package, it's not this one, but I don't know if I still have it, but one of the packages that I got of sample food at Expo West it was smaller than this, but it says this bag is compostable, which is really interesting to me. It's a little orange one. I got to find it. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this little tiny bag, which you normally think just has to go in the trash. It was like, that was compostable. And they thought about the packaging of it, which kind of brings me to that program that you helped launch about the plastic, right?
Yeah.
What's it called? Zero
Uh,
packaging, net
yeah,
zero
one
packaging.
step closer to zero waste packaging. So
Okay.
there's an organization called One Step Closer.
Okay.
Amazing organization in natural products that has brought together CEOs of a bunch of different brands for the last 20 years, and brands like Patagonia, Numi Tea, Sambazon, Imlakesh, Alter Eco, like kind of the most conscious brands in each vertical, really. And that's who we
Mm-hmm.
love to work with. So I ended up becoming really tribe with all these folks. But what they're doing is launching these different programs that are becoming kind of like systemic change movements within natural
Okay.
products. And so one of them is the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, and it's really it's amazing because every company is trying to, evolve their packaging to be more sustainable, but this is a group that's like pulling their resources and really making it, um, y you know, like moving through the innovation process to get things like that, like compostable packaging. I mean, it's not easy. Like, one of our clients is Sambazon, like I mentioned, they sell 90% of the acai in the world. And for those of
Okay.
you who don't know acai, it's like that purple, it usually comes frozen, make smoothies and acai bowls with fruit on top, all that kind of stuff. But it's frozen, right? So they sell it in the freezer aisle. It's really hard to replace plastic in the freezer aisle because to keep the integrity of your product. So they've been
Right.
working for like 15 years to make this
Wow.
ready to eat bowl that's fully biodegradable. I mean, literally, you can open it up, eat the bowl, and then you could put it in the ground, and
Wow.
that packaging is fully, compostable. We just one of our other clients, Clover Sonoma, which is a
Mhm.
dairy brand, one of the most conscious dairy brands in the world, here in Northern California. They launched the first fully renewable milk carton. So beyond
Wow.
like milk, they're putting like the plastic to make it easier for you to pour out the milk, but that makes it not renewable, recyclable, all these things. And so they launched that. They just did a 50% post-consumer recycled gallon container. So, these companies, they're like, out in the world, there's a lot of companies that want to do better. And then there's
Mhm.
organizations like this that are actually helping them, create the packaging to do it. So yeah, we launched this. A lot of times we get asked to launch these like business to consumer. So B2B to C movements where we're
Okay.
gathering a lot of brands to help educate consumers, for instance, about packaging,
Mhm.
and then show them where, companies are making strides forward. And yeah, really proud of that. That was the big kind of movement that we launched this year at Expo, along with,
Right.
a couple others. But that was
Right.
that one gained like I think 100 companies while we were there at Expo.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It reminds me going way back when the campaign to cut the Coke or soda,
Oh,
that
right,
had
the
the
rings. Yeah.
rings so that when it ends up, it's not choking a sea lion or a fish or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's
but
insane the stats on that, like how much
right.
plastic ends up in the ocean.
Exactly. Well, and I went to Vietnam actually 12 years ago, and we were on this little tiny island off the coast of Vietnam, and the dump there was just, it was high and gross, and the amount of plastic that they were getting. And was it Corona that was doing a campaign to pay the fishermen to collect the plastic
Mm,
out of the ocean? And I posted that a couple of months ago. I thought that was really cool because they were paying them what they get paid to get fish to do a whole weekend, to also come in and bring in the trash because they're
that's
out there.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's amazing.
think
There's that. I saw a similar program in India when I was
mhm,
there. Unfortunately, a lot of dumping in India, just dumping the trash and
mhm,
whatnot. And they were starting a program where they could actually, you got paid if you brought pounds of trash to this
mhm,
plant, and they were finding ways to recycle and
right.
reuse and stuff like that. Yeah, I think those programs are going to be popping up more and more, hopefully.
Well, that's really good. Now one of the sessions I went to with you was Jedi, and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And can you tell the listeners about what that means and the fact that J was added to the beginning of it and the DEI was switched around?
Well, us marketers, we got to find a
Right.
cute way to, get it out there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And who doesn't like Star Wars, right?
Right. Yeah.
But no, I mean that's the thing is well, again, it was started by One Step Closer. This is that
Okay.
that same
Hmm.
group
Right.
started this. The lead of it is actually this woman, Cheryl O'Laughlin, who started. She was the founder of Plum Organics. She then was the CEO of Cliff Bar. We helped launch Luna Bar for Cliff
Okay.
Bar. Then she became the CEO of Rebel. We became there, and then Jedi was her retirement, although she can't stop. But uh, It's amazing. I mean, people think ever since George Floyd really is I feel like there was this awakening, in our
Mm-hmm.
society. Thank God. I mean, it's a shame that it took that, but we'll take what we can get. There's this awakening around principles of equity, really at the
Mm-hmm.
core of it, like um, different from equality, but equity. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that there's certain folks that have been held down, like underserved populations that have been held down systemically in our society. So equity would say, well, it's not enough to make equal, but actually to lift up. Like we need to kind of, make sure that there's more justice in our society overall, and in natural products particularly. So this Jedi program kind of addressing a few areas. I mean, one is diversity in natural products hiring. So
Okay.
it's primarily it's very white and male and dominated, and I can't change the color of my skin or my own gender, but I certainly can contribute to making sure that future generations are look more diverse. And so it's kind of putting principles in at your company around that, and it's also beyond just the HR piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
How we build more equity in food systems. So there's food deserts all over this country, meaning
Yep.
places where people can't really find healthy food, and it's kind of it's a systemic issue because companies that have the best intentions, when they're not distributed in those areas, they're not called to kind of educate those consumers about, health benefits of all different kinds of products. I mean,
Right.
for instance, take like a kombucha with probiotics or something, and immune, stomach health. If that kombucha is not distributed in a certain area, they're not marketing and educating in that area, so then folks aren't buying those products, so then they don't get distributed in that area, and the cycle
Mm-hmm.
continues. So
Right.
these kinds of programs are meant to be a little more forward thinking in bringing in, like manifesting these principles and making it so companies are leading,
Right.
distributing products into food deserts, hiring in more diverse ways, thinking about, even for me, like as an advertising agency for these sorts of
Mm-hmm.
companies, it's like, just the more that if the target audience says, white millennial mom with two kids, how can I bring in other target audiences to make sure that they're served up, some of the campaigns that we're developing, and the media is actually
Right.
connecting with them, and stuff like that. So anyway, I mean, I could go on for a while. It's really a place of real passion for us at Guru,
Mm-hmm.
and and thank God, again, like purpose being this kind of buzzword that's
Right.
the word of the day. Like it's one of those things, like, sure, it's yeah, people are jumping on because they're being socially pressured to, but thank God it's happening. It's so
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah. Well, and I gave a presentation last month in Colorado called Purpose. You are what you eat. Welcome to the purpose-driven food movement.
Oh, I love that.
And and they actually gave me the title, and I just spoke to it, which was great. Meetings Industry Colorado. But I'm sitting there prepping for it, and it really is event food. And you probably witnessed this a little bit. And actually, I chatted with somebody that went to a different medical convention recently. And it's just like meeting, we get used to picking off. I want the deli sandwich on Monday, or deli platters on Monday, and I want the Mexican on Tuesday, and I want this on Asian on Wednesday. And it's just that thought. There's no purpose to it. And we really need to put the
Mm,
purpose back into why we're feeding them and what we're feeding them, because my budget last week was $335,000 before tax and gratuity. So it'll end up being $500,000 for just 500 people. So
wow.
$1,000 per person for a 2.5 day conference.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, well,
Yeah.
that's it. What you just said it right there. these are symptomatic issues. If we
Mm-hmm.
can get more mindful and intentional,
Mm-hmm.
just about our choices and
Right.
how we enter, business relationships and everything. I mean, when I'm going to lunch, I just took someone to lunch yesterday. It's like I'm thinking about the restaurant that that manifests my values.
Right.
I'm
Yep.
going to a local place that's
Mm-hmm.
organic, that treats their people well. I mean, those things. It's like how often we bring our values to certain categories. Like when a lot of folks shop in the produce aisle or something like that, they wouldn't think of not getting organic, right?
Right.
But then they go to get a bottle of wine, or they
Mm-hmm.
go to restaurant or whatever, and the values kind of go out. I mean, and also we do the best we can. It's
Right.
not about being like
Right.
making it too rigid. I'm not trying. God knows, like I'm not that, but doing the best we can,
Right.
and just
Mm-hmm.
being intentional about it. Like you said, it's like, God, if that's your budget, for 500 people, like, wow, like what an influence you can have,
Right.
on not
Yeah.
just that meeting, but on
Mm-hmm.
the actual people at that hotel,
Right.
at the caterers, like all that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Right.
making those opportunities to just not necessarily like get on your soapbox, but just like, educate a tiny bit
Right.
about like,
Yep.
little shifts in choices and thinking. And I find that it starts with that like intentionality,
Right.
that
Yeah.
you mentioned. Yeah.
Well, and I'm going back to that meeting last week. I actually had the convention services or the banquet captain take pictures of me in a chair sitting next to the buffet. And I'm trying to reach for the muffins that are on this top shelf. And I can't because so I'm trying to replicate. I'm a person utilizing a wheelchair or a scooter. And can I reach that? Right. And my friend Joan, I post these and God love her. She's like, Tracy, well, what about this? And what about this? And so with each one of her questions, I still learn. Right. And they had put toasters in front of the bagel display. And like, that's electrical hazard. Right. I mean, so it's learning. But while the banquet captain was taking my photos, the servers were watching and they were
Mm,
like saying, oh, well, never thought about that. Right. And so it's just, I wanted to take the pictures for my own slides, but then at the same time, I was educating.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what a beautiful gift, I mean, that's really, it's like, that's being human,
Right.
it's like, I mean, it's funny that, you taught me how to swim when I was 5, but learning to swim is like you do the wrong thing and you
Yeah.
learn not to do that again, right? And
Right.
and I think everyone wakes up every morning and wants to manifest their values and their choices.
Right.
There's
Mm-hmm.
the only reason you don't is there's some like lack of convenience, or you're not educated about a certain thing,
Mm-hmm.
packaging, for instance, or
Right.
you know how something was grown, or
Mm-hmm.
the 17 syllable word that's inside that product,
Those drive
and
me
you're like,
nuts. Yeah.
and you don't even know, and then
Right.
and you're like, oh, okay, now I can make a different choice.
Right.
And I mean, it's like my meditation teacher, always, she used to say, her name's Sharon Salzberg, and she would always say, in meditation, like she's been meditating for 50 years, and
Wow.
still in every meditation, she sits and she'll get pulled off on some thought, some tangent that like
Mm-hmm.
she didn't. She's like, God, and then there's a moment where she's pulled off, and she's like, oh, my intention was to be meditating right now. I should bring myself back to meditation. And so, but she does it with like humor, she kind of
Right.
laughs at herself a little bit, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there I am again, and like brings herself back, not with judgment, but like
Mm-hmm.
just back with some compassion. And
Right.
I think that's like the same thing with our choices, like when we walk through as business leaders or consumers or whatever, setting up meetings. It's like, okay, like, oh, I made that, mistake again. It's like, okay, it's just like a little awareness, like bring myself
Right.
back and then make a better choice.
I love that. Because you can't, you're only judging yourself and you need to just say, okay, hey, that happened and let's get on with it. Right. Or go back to where we were. Right. What we were doing.
Totally.
Um, okay. So there was this, you said it It's having a product with purpose, or how did you say that? It was,
Yeah. It's something I say a lot. So
yeah,
it's having a mission with a product rather than a
right.
product with a mission.
Okay, so as the marketing guru that you are, how how does an organization begin to do that, right? Or
Yeah.
if they have this, change their philosophy around it, and even an event, how do you create that event to do the same thing?
Yeah. Well, okay, first off, I have to tackle this marketing guru thing because
Okay.
so the reason I called this company Guru. So the real
Mm-hmm.
meaning of guru, which is this term that's kind of been bastardized in our society a little bit,
Right.
is facilitator.
Okay.
So seeing the light in somebody and bringing that forth. And so
Okay.
we really, when we say we are guru, it also means the collective. So Thich Nhat Hanh, another amazing Buddhist teacher, would say, the sangha, the next Buddha is the sangha, or the next Buddha is the community. So the thought
Okay.
being, there is no guru on some mountain that you go to and for all the answers, right? So like guru as like our name as
Mm-hmm.
this agency, the whole idea is we are guru, like all of us, we
Right.
all have the answers, and if we bring them forth, like we'll have a more thriving world. um so anyway, sorry, that's my
No, I
short little
love that. I love
commercial
it.
break. But I just, a lot of times that when I'll be referred to as like, oh, so you're the guru of, it's like, well, here's actual meaning in it. And so, and
Mm-hmm.
I think hopefully that, helps even with this next piece, which is like, yeah, like how to have a mission with a product,
Mm-hmm.
what it means is having a real theory of change, and then bringing a product forward or a business forward that helps, operationalize that theory of change in some way in the world, and
Mm-hmm.
really it came from, um, just realizing this kind of need, this shift I said earlier, from the single bottom line business to a triple bottom line business,
Mm-hmm.
and and not just making widgets and selling them being enough. So what I mean by that and how you do it is, first you crystallize your purpose. You really clarify your purpose for being. And purpose
Mm-hmm.
is this nebulous word, but to me it means, like, for instance, taking the, sustainable development goals, for instance, which are,
Right.
these 17 goals put out by the United Nations over the last decade. It's probably the most widely accepted rubric for impact, which has these themes like clean oceans or regenerative agriculture or,
Right.
healthy
No
cities, stuff like
hunger.
this.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
No hunger, exactly.
Yeah.
So so as a company, I really think like gathering your, just crystallizing and being very clear about what you're trying to do in the world. Like Rebel, who we work with, or worked with, we don't work with them anymore, but is a ready to drink, product that is sourcing ingredients from the Amazon. Their whole reason for being is to end human trafficking in Peru, in
Oh,
South
wow.
America. And the way to do that, they started out of a nonprofit that was just giving money to folks that were being pulled into this awful, industry. 50 million people around the world are being human trafficked right now.
Wow.
So their thought was, well, if we create a sustainable business, and build a vertically integrated supply chain, then we can help, folks, the farmers, the manufacturers, like in that region, have more opportunity that will pull them out of these other things like human trafficking, sex trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So clarity around human trafficking. Next, from that clarity, you have to move to alignment of your stakeholders, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the key stakeholder that are jumped over a lot of the time is your workforce. Like, how do you build a movement from the inside out? I mean, truly,
Right.
like, aligning, your folks around that purpose, for
Right.
being,
Mm-hmm.
and building a campaign, a communication strategy about that, making it
Mm-hmm.
clear, and then helping them, get on board. And then the third area is like, enablement, or empowering your workforce or your investors, or your consumers, your other stakeholders, to
Right.
actually make good and help, execute on that mission, the overall mission of the company. That's the way to do it. We have a whole,
Right.
process to move
Right.
companies through. And that came out of like being an advertising guy, and realize like so many companies were coming to us saying, hey, can you, do our marketing about, all these values? And it's like, well, are you operationalizing those values within your company first? Like, we don't do
Hmm.
greenwashing. So
Right.
really digging in, and yeah, I mean, that's, but that's without getting
Right.
into too much detail. Like, that's kind of the
Right.
process of like clarity, alignment, enablement,
Hmm.
to move into being a mission with a product, rather than being just developing a product. And this is okay too, I should say, like, and then reverse engineering mission, saying
Right.
like, okay, we've got this product now. People seem to care about doing good in the world. Like, shouldn't we have a mission, like some give back
Right.
strategy or something like that? And
Right.
sure, like we will get those projects too, but then we like, again, we'll take them back to their core and make sure it
Hmm.
like that starts to get woven into the very fabric of the company, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And my friend Zoe posted an article about DEI, and it kind of goes into that. You just can't just say I'm going to do this, right? We're going to implement DEI. You have to go back into where it all inside the company, and what are your policies and procedures, and what do your employees and your vendors and your customers think, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, great. You did a Black Lives Matter blog post, and
Right.
on Juneteenth, you put a black square on your social media.
Right.
But like, come on, I mean,
Right.
this is like systemic racism that needs to be fought,
Right.
and actively fought, not just like, um uh you know I mean, I had my eyes opened when I did this workshop on critical race theory, and and the woman said, she said, uh, racism is not just like, putting on a white hood like Ku Klux Klan. Like, that's not just that's extreme racism, but
Right.
racism's also not doing anything to fight against racism.
Right.
And that was
Hmm.
like, wow, okay, that
Yeah.
really opened my eyes. I was like,
Right.
it's not enough to just, you know um do certain things that like other people are going to see, or like curing little symptomatic, issues. I mean, take my industry for instance, marketing and advertising. It's like it's dominated, white male industry. And so I'm super proud of our, we've got our at our agency like 75% women, we're like 40% people of color. We try to bring a multicultural lens to everything
Hmm.
that we do. We'll push back on clients for not having certain target audiences as they're, in the
Right.
brief, and
Hmm.
all these sorts of things. But I mean, it's taking like me and us to do core work, to
Right.
really authentically shift it. And it'll be lifetime of work of
Right.
unraveling.
Hmm.
I mean, actually, you'll appreciate this, because we grew up on the same street, um,
Yes.
Deerhorn Court in Shipley's
Yep.
Choice, right
Hmm.
in
Yep.
Maryland, right in between Annapolis and Baltimore. Really, privileged, beautiful place
Hmm.
to live. So the same workshop, um, uh she had us close our eyes and do this kind of mindfulness exercise where she said, okay, I want you to think about how many people of color lived in your neighborhood growing up. And i and
Oh,
i and I closed my eyes and I thought about Shipley's Choice, and I was like, not a lot of black people in our neighborhood,
no. Mm-mm.
And then she said, okay, if there's not people of color in your neighborhood, where did they live? And I'm thinking, okay, like and she wanted us to answer this from like our 5-year-old self. And
Right.
so I'm thinking, okay, Baltimore, and other, Glen Burnie, like
Yeah.
some other areas
Hmm.
around. Now, what did you think of those areas? Like, think of the impression that in your parents or teachers or other influential people gave to you about those areas. And tears just started coming. I just started
Right.
thinking about, yeah, they're dangerous, don't go
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And that became synonymous with people of color. I mean, I'm
Right.
saying these things in a very open way, and I'm not being glib about it. I mean, it's really serious core,
Mm-hmm.
processing that I have to unravel for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so, like, when you're taught that way, okay. And then she said, of your teachers, like, how many teachers were people of color? Um, okay, if they weren't people of color, how many of them studied critical race theory and taught you about that, right?
Right.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, but we live in an amazing time where, because of George Floyd,
Mm-hmm.
there's this awakening that's happening, and others, I
Right.
mean, remiss not to say all the other names, but there's this awakening that's happening, and it's beautiful, and
Right.
it's like, yeah, there's people that misstep. I mean, there's woke culture and,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's like it's way overdue, and it's happening,
Right.
and it's
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're talking about those neighborhoods, I remember my dad used to taught me how to get around DC. And people are like, "You're driving through those parts of DC?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's the big deal?" And they're like, "It's dangerous." I'm like, "I'm going to drive with my window down. I don't care. It's fine. As long as you're aware of your surroundings. And I mean, it could be in your neighborhood. It could be in
Yeah.
your own neighborhood. It could have happened in Shipley's Choice. Somebody could have shot a gun off in Shipley's Choice. Right. But yeah, it does
Yeah.
make me,
I mean, I'm about
yeah.
to take a road trip down in Mexico. My family, we're going to live down in Mexico for a couple months this summer. And part of that is immersing my kids in a, different culture and different
Mm-hmm.
language and
Yep.
all of that. And I'm driving down through Baja. I mean, it's a
Mm-hmm.
24-hour drive to the tip of Baja, then a 12-hour ferry that goes to mainland Mexico. And, I tell people that, like, oh my God, what about the cartels? Like, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, and I mean, it just shows, like, I mean, yes, there is danger
Right.
everywhere, and
Mm-hmm.
there's danger there and these sorts of things. But it's like, then, like, that gets in our head about, like, Mexico and then
Right.
Mexicans, and
Mm-hmm.
it, and then
Mm-hmm.
we just
Yeah.
start to categorize as we do, as
Right.
humans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a shame. So I,
Right.
I think there's, like, some of that core kind of, it's like, rewiring the synapses in some way to kind of forget some of how we were wired as kids. And, I
Right.
can say for myself, like, living in a, a pretty, well off, white suburb of Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
drive 20 minutes, and, oh my God, not a
Completely
great
different.
area,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know.
Exactly. Exactly. But Pat Sajak lives down the street too.
Right. Right. Totally.
Does he still live down there? Somewhere down there.
Right, I know, it was like, what, Chartwell or something, right? It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can go to, I mean, Pat Sajak's house,
Yeah.
like,
Exactly. Right. That was rude. But he does live there. Because he married a woman from there. That's why he
right.
moved there. Yeah. Um, okay, so jumping back to food, how can we were talking about before we got on the show that I introduced a chef recently to um, what is that egg called? Just egg, because it's vegan and it was at the show, and it ironically is made by an egg manufacturer, which I was mind blown by. But they have a QR code on the back. It says, "Scan this. You can see our testing." They tested allergens, because I'm like, what the egg allergy thing. But how do we get the products that you wrap into hotels? And it actually, before you answer that, I was talking to a gentleman who used to work for a hotel, and when he used to work at Yale, he said the distribution options, the food options around there were really higher end because Yale required it, right? They
Mm,
wanted grass fed, grass finished beef, and they wanted they had these standards. And so anybody in that area, the food distributing companies had a better, higher quality food or options because they had that. But if you go to Idaho, right, there's not necessarily a large company like Yale or university that's kind of mandating that to pull those products into that region. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, it
I mean,
does.
it goes
Well,
back to the food desert in a way, right?
yeah, I mean, more folks like you, making it happen. I mean, it takes pressure, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's education on the buyer side,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes pressure from the event producer side
Mm-hmm.
to bring things forth with their values. I mean, it's interesting. A friend of mine is working at Rivian, the an electric car company,
Okay.
and they're doing all these events, and she's really interested in bringing a lot of our clients in. She's like, "Oh my God, you're like a one-stop shop because you've got, Wild Planet, which is the most conscious like tuna. They're doing these ready-to-eat
Okay. Yep.
bowls, and we've got Sambazan doing acai bowls, and Numi doing tea, and Clover doing dairy." And she's like, literally, you've curated like all the most conscious brands in each vertical. So that's on the demand side, like we look at these principles and things. I really do. That's why, like, meeting you, it's like awesome. Like, we all have a part to play, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's that, like, we are guru kind of thought is like, well, gosh, like if I can just, you know, um, tell you, because you've got the values and then you've
Right.
got the power as well, like in your meetings, the hope is that it becomes contagious. It's like
Right.
my uh my dad has a financial advisor that's been helping him for 40 years, and pretty traditional firm, and then I finally had enough money, over the last decade to start having a financial advisor. So he said, "Oh, you should use, him." And I started talking to him, and the first thing I said, "Well, first off, I need you to divest anything I have that's doing any harm. Like, I need to get out of the
Wow.
Carbon Underground 200 and like any of that, like mutual." He's like, "Well, how do your mutual funds? You're in like a bunch of stuff." I said, "Look, my number one priority is not investing in anything where I'm doing harm. My second priority would be doing good,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then yeah, it'd be nice to make money too, like over
Right.
years, if we're
Yeah.
investing." And so he and I have had this really cool journey over the last decade of like me educating him around these different funds and these
Mm-hmm.
different tools to do more socially responsible investing. So I use that example as a parallel because I think in the same way, we need to educate, those buyers on the other
Mm-hmm.
side and those
Mm-hmm.
hotels. I mean, it's like, and it's better for business too. I mean, that's the
Right.
funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, when I was at this hotel last week, and they've got, in my room, single-use plastic water bottles, and I'm at this convening. We're taking every room of the hotel, and in this convening is, I'm talking about net zero packaging, yet I've got these single-use plastic bottles in the hotel room, and I'm like, come on.
Right.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
why not have the
Right.
path water bottle? It's
Right.
and so somewhere in the line, either someone was too lazy, or they didn't know about,
Right.
this option, or uh worst of all, honestly, is they knew about it but they didn't have the budget. Like, that water
Mm-hmm.
bottle is 10
Yeah.
cents more expensive,
Right. Right.
than
Right.
something else. And path water isn't, by the way. You can, for anyone listening, like, it's the same price. So I think that more of that, we need to educate, and then make those choices possible, and then hopefully people wake up to the point that they're like, okay, I'm going to manifest my
Mm-hmm.
values with my choice in my
Right.
business or in my personal life.
Right. Well, and you say it's $3. The hotels are charging $7.25 for this in a meeting room. And in your
Oh,
hotel room, it's $11. And it's not volcano water. It's like
right.
whatever. And so, I mean, if I can get these in, right, for less than $7, right, or, let's stay it, but, the hotels are like, well, I can't get that from my distributor. So we have to work on who those distributors are and who those approved vendors are, because they're being held back by corporate saying you can only buy from these people.
Well,
And
that's the other thing. I mean,
mhm,
it's the bureaucracy
Right.
in the
Yeah.
system,
Mm-hmm.
of like,
Yeah.
well, they're not an approved vendor, so we can't. Da, 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 da. It's like,
Right.
no, your hotel guests would like you to not use single-use
Right.
plastic water bottles. Figure it out.
Right.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be so blunt, and I mean, it's actually where I'm going with the company, with our
Mm-hmm.
agency Guru. It's interesting because for years it's a very loving place, and we're not going anywhere from that. I mean, our
Yeah.
whole mission is to increase joy and reduce suffering on the planet. We do that for ourselves, we do that for our clients, and through our clients for the world. But I'm moving into more activist kind of
Mm-hmm.
positioning, with the agency. I'm just like feeling the urgency. I got a 5-year-old and an 8-month-old daughter, and I'm like, you know what, like, figure it out, like, get rid of
Mm-hmm.
single-use plastic. It's like, it's possible. Your consumers want it. There's zero reason not
Right.
to, move in that direction. So, unless someone can give me a really viable, answer as to why you're not doing it, I'm like really beating on, and we won't work with companies that aren't. I mean, this is one topic I could go into, get on
Right.
my soapbox about, the rest. But in particular, I'm a surfer. I really care about the oceans, and
Mm-hmm.
we're literally killing our ability, not even our planet, because the planet's going to be fine, but our ability for the planet to be habitable by us as
Mm-hmm.
humans. And it's like, 90% of the top layer of the ocean is plastic now. I mean,
Wow.
microplastic, it's not just these like islands of plastic that are
Mm-hmm.
gathering out in the Pacific. It's microplastic. You can't see it. It's in the water, as much as
Wow.
water is plastic. And it's just it's unfathomable to me that people are still making companies that are
Right.
using this much, you know,
Right.
plastic. It's crazy. So anyway, like, I mean, I'll get off my soapbox for now, but there are these, we just put this whole campaign, net zero packaging, uh, and we're working with organizations like the Climate Collaborative, which is like 800 natural products brands, which are making different commitments around climate action.
Mm-hmm.
We put out a whole ebook on our site, weareguru.com, which which is about how to catalyze your consumers in climate action with you. It's actually the best way to build love and loyalty
Mm-hmm.
with your consumers is engage them in the movement.
Right. Yep.
Don't market at people anymore. Like, bring them into the movement. Meet them where their values are. It's like, marketing's gotten pretty easy. It's like, do less. Be
Right.
authentic. Like, help
Yeah.
people
Mm-hmm.
manifest their values, and you'll be in a great place as a company. You'll develop love,
Well, and I think that is really even George Floyd, but also the pandemic and bringing back and having purpose with what you're doing is like people are choosing to do events with purpose, right? Do I really need to go to the Natural Products Expo or XYZ company convention? Make sure that
Right.
you've got the right purpose behind that. So,
That's right.
yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So you just said your website, but tell everybody again where they can find you. Cassie, be quiet. Um,
I've got my dog here too, biting at
yeah.
my ankles. So our website, weareguru.com.
Okay.
That's where you can find us. And yeah, don't be a stranger. I mean, if you've got a company that's looking to manifest your values, we will work with you to help kind of crystallize that purpose. And what we're most known for is kind of building creative campaigns and brands that then bring that into the world and then engage influencers and consumers and other stakeholders in that movement, and make better choices for themselves.
Right.
Yeah, and this has been like so fun. I mean, really, to
It has
reconnect
been
with you is like, it's just such a joy. Really, I so love seeing you and what you're doing and your purpose, and I'm so glad that to know what you're bringing into the world, to these
thank you.
different convenings and meetings and helping people be more conscious around that. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. All right. I have one final question. If you could eat dinner with anyone, dead or alive, around the world, who would it be and what would you eat? Oh, I actually have one more
Wow,
question after that.
it's a great question. You know, I would love, I mean, it's kind of far out, but Buckminster Fuller is like one of the most interesting humans. I think I've, he's an inventor and just kind of at the core of a lot of my philosophy and stuff. So
Uh-huh.
I'd love to eat like a nice, share like a nice warm Indian meal with Buckminster Fuller, like eating some curry and some chai and, like a nice long drawn out meal on like sitting on cushions. That'd be a dream. The
All
other one I was
right.
thinking about was Bob Marley, but I'll stick with Buckminster Fuller.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And then one final question to end it is, and I know I asked you this before pre-show is, but what does in your work a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience mean?
Gosh, that's a great question. You know, it it means that people have the ability to manifest their values in what they're eating, and that means taking care of people and the planet in the way those products were created and sourced. It means they're regenerative in that hopefully how they were grown, carbon was taken out of the air and put back into the soil where it belongs. It means they're organic. It means they're non-GMO. Big plug for non-GMO Project, who were are a client of ours. It means that they're giving back to their local communities. That the packaging is thoughtful and hopefully compostable or renewable in some way.
Mhm.
I could keep going, but I think you're that
I totally get it.
that
Yeah.
that the people at that company are taken care of, and hopefully they're a B Corp.
Mhm.
Hopefully they're a 1% for the planet member. Kind of, for me, it's like there wouldn't even necessarily be a brand name. It's just all certifications and values all over that brand. That's what's most important to me. And it really says a lot when someone invites me to a meeting or
Mhm.
a convening, and how that meeting or convenient, like, yeah, I mean, all the choices in that are intentional, and um maybe there's those of us that are just a little busy to get so intentional about it. And I'll like end with this. The Dalai Lama always said, if you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, you probably need 20. And so, for those of us that are so busy that we can't think
Right.
about it, maybe like really put a spot in your calendar to just like sit and think about that, your choices as a business and as a consumer.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Everybody, this is my friend Gagan Jared Levy. Um, we've known each other for 35, 40 years. Yeah. So pleasure. I'm so glad we reconnected, and we will connect offline again. Everybody, thank you for listening. This is the Eating at a Meeting podcast. We're here live every Wednesday, and you can pick us up on all podcast platforms. And until next week, which actually is May, which means it's Food Allergy Awareness and Celiac Disease Awareness Month. So tune in to who I've got a large lineup of people for next month. So until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks.